Hello, everyone, and welcome to Grid Tonight, your weekly motorsports news program. I'm Adam Limrace, and with me, as always, is Kobe Lambeth from the Podium Finish. And we have a special guest joining us tonight from Grid Live Encore, which you can see Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern here on Grid Network, co-host Ben Schneider, who will be with us for the first half of the show. We want to thank our Patreon supporters, Colin, Mark, and Deshell. Thank you for investing in Grid Network, and link to our Patreon in the video description below. And please feel free to comment in the chat room below and ask any questions. Tonight we'll discuss Colton Herta getting his first major opportunity in F1, Matt White's grid history update, and a preview of the FIA World Endurance Championship season opener, the 1,000 Miles of Sebring. We'll start off discussing an American driver with hopes and dreams of competing in F1.
Yeah, a lot of American drivers have hopes and dreams of competing in Formula One, not just American drivers all over the world, whether you're racing in IndyCar, NASCAR, sports cars, because Formula One is definitely the pinnacle of motorsport. And last weekend at the Bahrain preseason test, McLaren F1 made a huge announcement. Andretti Autosport IndyCar driver Colton Herta signed with McLaren to become one of his Formula One test drivers this year. Many have been hyping up Herta as America's next Formula One driver, but there haven't been many realistic opportunities for that dream to become a reality until now. The new Formula One sporting regulations gives teams a chance to evaluate young talent behind the wheel of an F1 car in the previous year's car. If the FIA gives Andretti Global the green light to enter Formula One in 2024, Herta is expected to leave IndyCar and become an Andretti Formula One driver. And with McLaren signing Herta to join their Formula One test program, is the young American on a realistic path to becoming a full-time Formula One driver?
Yep, and I'll give you some knowledge. The last American to compete with McLaren in Formula One, we know, was Michael Andretti in 1993. His best finish of that year was third at the Italian Grand Prix in Monza. He had a lot of DNFs. It only lasted through half of the season. But I think now with this opportunity, I think the next American F1 driver, his name is Colton Herta. And how cool would it be to see him go up against names like Max Verstappen, Fernando Alonso, and the rest of the F1 grid? And who knows, we could get some more American viewers to watch Formula One if this happens.
Well, Adam, you brought up a good point. He is certainly connected with all the right people, because not only Michael Andretti, obviously having Formula One experience and kind of spearheading this whole Andretti Global deal, one of his Andretti Autosport teammates, Alexander Rossi, is the last American to race in F1. He did 5 starts for Manor in 2015. So Herta is certainly surrounded by the right people with the right experience to try to make this happen. And now to get this deal with McLaren, in case this Andretti Global entry falls through, I have to think it probably won't. I think if a name like Haas, with no disrespect to Gene Haas or anything, but they were going through the same thing. There were 10 teams on the Formula One grid. They wanted to be the 11th. They ended up getting the deal done. I don't see why a name like Andretti, of all names, couldn't get that same deal done. And I think Colton Herta obviously is going to be the best fit to be one of those drivers. And this deal with McLaren is going to get him even more experience, maybe even some test opportunities to get behind the wheel of a car before that deal ultimately would come together around 2024 or so.
Yeah, I definitely think this is a wonderful opportunity for Colton Herta to get the experience in the Formula One world. Some great test opportunities coming up this year for him, and we'll certainly see what happens. And I agree with what you said, Ben. I'd be actually pretty shocked if the Andretti Global Formula One team does not become a thing. I think it's certainly going to happen, and it would definitely be an absolute stunner if Formula One, for some crazy reason, decides to reject this. Like, come on, you have the Andretti name coming back to the Formula One grid. Andretti is a highly recognizable, highly accomplished name in the world of motorsports, regardless of discipline. So I think it would be extremely beneficial to have Andretti on the grid. And if Andretti comes to Formula One, Colton Herta definitely a given to be there. Formula One driver. So I think that Colton Herta he's on an extremely realistic path to becoming America's next Formula One driver. And McLaren giving Herta a chance to test a Formula One car isn't really a surprise when you think about the close relationship between McLaren's Zach Brown and Michael Andretti. When McLaren returned to IndyCar with an Indy 500 only program for Fernando Alonso's Triple Crown attempt, Brown partnered with Andretti Autosport and Honda to give Alonso a legitimate shot of winning the greatest spectacle in racing. Brown and Andretti also have a Repco Supercars championship team down under. They won last year's Bathurst 1000, Walkinshaw Andretti United. Another thing to note, Arrow McLaren SP IndyCar driver Pato O'Ward has made it perfectly clear his eyes are set on going to Formula One in the future, possibly with McLaren. O'Ward got to test the McLaren Formula One car at the end of last year in Abu Dhabi. However, nothing Formula One related has been announced this year for Pato. Very interesting for McLaren to name Herta as one of the test drivers before O'Ward, who is currently a part of the McLaren family. In the photo you see on the screen of Pato O'Ward taken by Chris Owens from Penske Entertainment. And starting with you, Ben, do you see Herta at McLaren as a friend? Zach Brown helping out his friend Michael Andretti, and how would you feel about this announcement if you were Pato O'Ward?
I'm sure that's certainly part of it. Obviously, we know Zach Brown and Michael Andretti have a close working relationship in many different areas, and I think that this is only further proof of that. And we know that Colton Herta obviously has Formula One on his radar. Michael Andretti has that on his radar for Colton Herta. So, is it a favor? I'm sure it is in many respects, but I think it's a little bit of both. Obviously, you want to get Colton some experience being within a Formula One team before 2024 when this deal is supposed to come together. When you talk about Pato O'Ward, it's funny looking at the numbers again. I'm thinking back to what happened with Alexander Rossi in 2015 when he finished second in the GP2 standings. Rio Harrienzo was fourth. Harrienzo, the fourth place driver, gets the seat at Manor for 2016. Rossi's left on the sidelines, has to settle for the reserve role. And a similar thing has happened here now. Pato O'Ward was second in the IndyCar standings in 2021. Colton Herta, as you saw in the graphic that we showed earlier, ended up fourth. So it's interesting that Herta is the one that has gotten this official test deal before Pato O'Ward, despite the fact that O'Ward was higher in the standings last year and has obviously a lot more experience working together with the McLaren team. But that's motor racing sometimes. Sometimes, the driver that finishes highest in the standings doesn't always get the best deal. I think things have just kind of gone Colton Herta's way when it comes to the Formula One rumors and the Formula One aspirations that he's had in recent months. Andretti was close to buying the Alfa Romeo Sauber team, and that ultimately fell through. And now we have them trying to start their own team to get Colton on the grid. So if I were Pato O'Ward, I would be a little disappointed. I think it'd be only human to feel that way. It'd be kind of strange if he wasn't feeling disappointed because, race car drivers always got a goal to move up the ladder to the place that they're trying to go. But I've got to think, O'Ward is obviously a talent. He's gotten a test deal, albeit it was just a one-off with McLaren before. So he has experience getting behind the wheel of the car. And I would say that, obviously with his age as well, being, roughly the same age as Colton Herta, roughly the same experience as Colton Herta, his Formula One dream probably isn't dead yet just either.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ben. I don't think Pato O'Ward's Formula One dream isn't over just yet. And how I would be about this announcement about Pato O'Ward, well, I'd be kind of disappointed. Pato O'Ward has been with McLaren for a while now, and we saw what happened. He didn't get a chance. He didn't get a chance to, be a reserve driver, and Colton Herta, hasn't been there for that long, and now he gets this opportunity. If I were Pato O'Ward. I would try my hardest to continue chasing my dreams to try to get into F1, and who knows, maybe if this Andretti Global F1 team comes to F1 in 2024, we could see Pato O'Ward in an F1 car, and he can say he chased his dreams all the way to competing on the F1 grid with names like Max Verstappen and Fernando Alonso.
Yeah, and Pato O'Ward seems dead set on going to Formula One. That seems like that's his only major goal at the moment is to make it to Formula One. And looking at his comments recently, speaking to the media, offering very cryptic remarks, talking about how he doesn't know what he's going to be doing after the 2022 IndyCar season. That he could be in IndyCar, he could be over racing in Formula One. And he spoke with reporters earlier today, and it was really interesting listening to his comments. And a reporter asked Pato, "Did you know about Colton Herta's Formula One test opportunity before it was announced to the world?" And Pato actually paused for seconds before answering that question, and he said, "Yeah, he found out about it a few weeks ago." And while we can't really say what Pato O'Ward is really thinking about this, it's hard to imagine him not being disappointed. And Ben mentioned getting that Formula One opportunity, Abu Dhabi, after he won an IndyCar race, because Zach Brown told him if he won an IndyCar race, then he would allow him to test a McLaren Formula One car at the end of the 2021 season. And Zach Brown kept his word, and Pato O'Ward got to test a Formula One car. And I think Pato was really looking for more. And more would have been that Pato O'Ward is named a McLaren test driver. And the thing is, Pato's been with the McLaren family for a couple of years now, so he was already integrated within the team, and spent time on the Formula One operation side of things as well, getting used to things over there in McLaren's other racing program. And for McLaren to bring an outsider, Colton Herta, into the McLaren family like that and give him an official Formula One test role before O'Ward, I think that's something that might have potentially upset Pato O'Ward, because considering the season he had last year in IndyCar, it definitely showed that he's deserving of a Formula One test role opportunity. And that's not to say that Pato O'Ward won't get that opportunity. It's still early, and Formula One team will be able to test multiple young drivers, so we could see Pato O'Ward and Colton Herta testing a McLaren Formula One car later this year. So it's definitely not over for Pato. I just think it might be the fact that Colton was not inside the McLaren family, and they brought him into the fold while Pato was already there. And also another thing, you remember those two, Pato O'Ward, Colton Herta, they teamed up during the Rolex 24 in January, and they won the LMP2 class with Dragon Speed. So they've had a friendly rivalry last couple of years, dating back to their time in Indy Lights as teammates. So Colton Herta, Pato O'Ward, IndyCar rivals, been teammates, been racing against each other for a long time, and now it seems like they're rivals, trying to make it to Formula One as well. We have a question in the chat room from our own Joe Samniego, and I'm going to throw this to you first, Ben. Joe asks, if O'Ward outperforms Herta in 2022, could that change his path towards Formula One?
His being O'Ward's, I'm assuming here, probably, right? Yeah, I would say, if O'Ward goes out and wins an IndyCar championship, or is in contention for a championship again, wins multiple races, McLaren obviously having a Formula One team of their own, I think it would be foolish not to reconsider their plans for Pato O'Ward, and maybe consider, if not putting him in one of their two seats, because we'll see how Daniel Ricciardo and Lando Norris perform this year. They're both very good drivers. There might not be an opportunity for O'Ward at McLaren, but there might be an opportunity as the official reserve driver or test driver or whatever the case may be that O'Ward could easily slide into. So I think absolutely, certainly if he outperforms the other guy in the IndyCar series that we're talking about as a top F1 prospect right now, I think McLaren almost have to take a look at that and see if they could give O'Ward an opportunity on the Formula One side of things.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ben. If Pato O'Ward does outperform Colton Herta in 2022, if I were McLaren, I would take a good look at O'Ward for their, as a reserve driver, or or if things don't work out in F1 at McLaren for Fernando Alonso and Lando Norris, could we see a Ward in one of those two McLarens down the road? Absolutely.
I think you met Daniel Ricciardo there, Adam. I believe
I
believe you said Fernando Alonso. So Daniel Ricciardo, Lando Norris, currently the full-time drivers at McLaren F1. It's going to be interesting to see what's going on. I know they signed up Lando Norris for the future. It doesn't seem like the team is ready to part ways with Daniel Ricciardo yet, but Ricciardo is definitely going to need to have a big year because I still think you're going to have Pato O'Ward potentially being a contender for that seat, because I don't see Colton Herta driving for McLaren in Formula One, because I'm pretty sure the Andretti Global Formula One program is going to happen. They're going to keep Colton, carry him over from the Andretti IndyCar program and put him to the Andretti Formula One program. So I still think that there's a possibility this is all going to work out in the way that Pato O'Ward wants it to. So it's definitely not over for the young Mexican driver. I appreciate that question from Joe. Now switching gears to another driver, last year's Formula 2 champion, a driver many believe should have been on the Formula 1 grid full-time this year, and that is the Australian Oscar Piastri. A great season last year in Formula 2 showed how worthy he is to be a Formula 1 driver. Unfortunately, no seats available for him this season, so Alpine signed him to be their reserve driver in case Fernando Alonso or Esteban Ocon are unable to compete. Piastri would get called up to race. Alpine is also allowing McLaren to use Piastri as a potential replacement driver. So if Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo, who recently had COVID-19 but tested negative, so he's good to go this weekend, and there's no need for Piastri and Bahrain. And the photo you see on the screen, courtesy of Alpine F1. Since Piastri doesn't have a full-time job this year in Formula One, he's been a reserve driver for Alpine and McLaren, the next best thing.
Yep. I think it's really good for him, and I was thinking about other motorsports series that have reserve drivers, and one name came to mind was Ryan Preece. He's a reserve driver at Stewart-Haas Racing in NASCAR in case something happens to one of those two drivers. So being a reserve driver, it's a good thing, because COVID-19 is still out there. Anybody can get it. So if Ricciardo or Lando Norris get COVID-19 again, Oscar Piastri would be called up, and he could say he fulfilled his F1 dream. He can say he fulfilled a dream of his to compete in F1 alongside names like Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, and Fernando Alonso.
Well, getting called up because someone tests positive for COVID, I'm sure, is probably the last way any driver would want to make their Formula One debut, or any illness or injury for that matter. I'm sure Piastri is still gunning for a full-time seat. Look, the best thing when you're not on the Formula One grid is always to be racing somewhere else full-time in some other prestigious series. So if you want to think back to, again, Alexander Rossi, after missing out on the Manor seat in 2016, not only was he the reserve driver for Manor in 2016, he also had a full-time IndyCar deal. I'd say that went fairly well for him. He just kind of won the Indianapolis 500 on his debut. So I think that worked out okay for him, but it gave him another opportunity to race full-time and compete for, a win or a championship in another series while still keeping that F1 dream on hold. Piastri right now, the reserve driver role that he has for Alpine, it's absolutely better than nothing. It has him in a situation where he still has a foot in the door. And in case something happens to one of Alpine's drivers or one of McLaren's drivers now, he does have that opportunity to get called up. But I think the best thing for any driver who's not in Formula One is to be racing full-time somewhere else. So if Piastri could add that to his resume and give him more seat time, more opportunities to be behind the wheel of a race car rather than sitting around and waiting for a call-up, I think that would be the best-case scenario for him. It is unfortunate because a lot of times, this isn't necessarily unprecedented where we see the GP2 champion or the Formula 2 champion not be allowed to come back and defend his title. And so he has to go race a year of Super Formula or a year of IndyCar or whatever the case may be, or just sit on the sidelines and find a reserve driver role or something, I think maybe that's something the FIA should look at, maybe allowing the Formula 2 driver to come back if there's no seat available, as what's happened here to Oscar Piastri, because he's such a talent and it is really unfortunate. We all know he should be in Formula 1, but it just didn't work out that way.
Yeah, unfortunately, it just didn't work out that way. And that's one of the rules I really hate on the road to F1 ladder system, where you win the championship, you're basically banned from competing in the series ever again. And we've seen in other series, especially thinking about NASCAR, coming back to run another year of Xfinity can really do you a great deal. We saw that most recently with our Daytona 500 champion Austin Cindric. He won the NASCAR Xfinity Series championship, and then he came back for another year and became a much better, more polished driver. So I think sometimes a second year of experience in a lower division can help help you improve your craft as a driver. So I think Oscar Piastri, if nothing came available in Formula One, he should have been allowed to come back to Formula 2 because he could become an even better driver in year 2 with another year of FIA Formula 2 experience. And yes, a reserve row at Alpine and getting a call up from McLaren if something happens to Norris or Ricardo, that certainly is the next best thing. But I agree with Ben when you were saying that it's probably best that you're at least racing something. No, Oscar is an Australian driver. I know Adam would be really excited to see him race in the Repco Supercars Championship. If they could have a wild card seat open, that would be really nice for him, so he can at least be driving something. I know, obviously, a massive departure from Formula racing, but at least he would be behind the wheel of a race car, or maybe racing the European Le Mans Series, World Endurance Championship, and LMP2. Still not nothing like driving a Formula car, but driving style is quite similar in those high downforce prototypes. Alpine even has a grandfather LMP1 hypercar program. So so after Le Mans, if they have a second car available, why not put Piastri in one of those? I think that could be a great option for him. But definitely Alpine, McLaren, next best thing. But I'm sure he'd probably rather be racing somewhere in the world.
Yeah, it's called, if you're not, it's called, it would be nice to see Oscar Piastri allowed to compete in Formula 2 again. The more experience you have, the better driver you become, and it's just a matter of time. I think we all would like to see. I know a lot of fans across the world would like to see Oscar Piastri on the F1 grid, and hopefully it will be in the future.
If I could just come in real quick to respond to something Kobe said about Austin Cindric, he's far from the only one that did that. Tyler Reddick did it. Chase Elliott did it. Even though Elliott didn't defend his championship, he spent an extra year before he came into Cup. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. did it. Martin Truex Jr. did it. Dale Earnhardt Jr. did it. So there's a lot of drivers that, despite winning an Xfinity championship, they spent another year in Xfinity, and then it better prepared them for when they got to the Cup Series. And then you look at somebody like Daniel Suarez, who won an Xfinity championship, was expecting to come back and defend his title. Carl Edwards suddenly retires. He gets thrown into the Cup seat, and I wouldn't say he had a bad year by any stretch of the imagination, but he didn't make the playoffs, and I think he was thrown in sooner than he was expecting. So are some drivers ready as soon as they win their first championship? Yeah, absolutely. But it should be an option, I think, for that driver to come back and defend their championship, especially if, like we see here with Piastri, there's nothing available.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ben. And we want to thank you for joining us on the first half of the show. And be sure to subscribe to Ben Sanders' YouTube channel, and also watch him and his co-host Brandon Crossland every Monday night at 8 p.m. right here on Grid Network. And be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page and hit the little bell icon as well, so you get a notification every time Grid Live Encore, Grid Tonight, or any other of our shows are on the air, so you don't miss any of the action that we talk about. And now, switching over to some sports car news. Two-time Repco Supercars champion Shane Van Gisbergen will make his 24 Hours of Le Mans debut this summer. Yeah, you heard that right. SVG is going to compete at Circuit de la Sarthe, and it'll happen a week before the Repco Supercar Championship hits Hidden Valley in Darwin, Western Australia. So pretty cool opportunity for SVG. To be competing in the GTE Pro class, driving the number 74 Ferrari 488 GTE for Riley Motorsports. His co-drivers are Formula E driver Sam Bird and Felipe Fraga. And let us know in the chat how will Shane Van Gisbergen do at the 24 Hours of Le Mans this summer, and also let us know what other supercar drivers you'd like to see competing in the summer classic known as the 24 Hours of Le Mans. And for me, I'd like to see Chaz Mostert compete there. And also, how cool would this be for a 24 Hours of Le Mans car? Shane Van Gisbergen, Triple Eight race engineer Jamie Whincup, and Craig Lowndes, also a Red Bull Impulse Sport driver who normally competes at the Bathurst 1000. How cool would that be? Kobe, which supercar drivers would you like to see compete at the 24 Hours of Le Mans if they could?
Well, if they could, I think the easiest bet has to be, besides what I already mentioned, is Chaz Mostert. Chaz Mostert has experience racing for BMW, and BMW is going to have a prototype racing in the next year or so with the LMDH platform. So and I believe they're going to be racing two cars in the IMSA GTP category. But we haven't really seen what BMW's plans are for the 24 Hours of Le Mans. But if BMW decides to go for the overall win, competing alongside the other LMDH cars and the Le Mans hypercars, I could see maybe sliding Chaz Mostert into one of the BMW prototypes to go for the overall race win. So that's my pick right there, Chaz Mostert. And the photo you saw on the screen of the Ferrari, that's courtesy of Ferrari themselves. And next we have some more Ferrari news. This morning, Ferrari said they're going to be moving away from its current 488 GT3 model, and they're going to replace it with the brand new Ferrari 296 GT3 beginning next season. And here's some photos here, courtesy of Ferrari. They plan to kick off its on-track testing program in the months ahead, so they'll be well prepared to debut their brand new car in 2023. Next, here's Matt White with a Grid History update.
Hi everybody, Matt White here from Grid History, back to give you this week's World Motorsports Results Roundup. Not so much going on this weekend, so we'll fly through and we'll start in Europe, in Portugal, with the European Rally Championship getting its season underway. Neil Solon's getting his first victory in the category, dominated the weekend as well over in Portugal, getting the season underway on Friday night and completed the sweep of the weekend to take the maximum points. At Phoenix, of course, we have NASCAR. Noah Gragson getting his first win of the season in the Xfinity Series on Saturday evening, and Chase Briscoe getting his first Cup win on Sunday. Not so much this weekend gone, but this weekend coming up, we've got absolutely everything going on. Of course, it's the kick-off to Formula 1 in Bahrain. Of course, that means it's Formula 2 and Formula 3 as well. MotoGP is in action in Indonesia for the first time since '97 at a brand new track for them at Mandalika. We've got, of course, MotoGP, Moto2 and Moto3. All three NASCAR series are in action this weekend at Atlanta. Interesting to see how that goes with the new configuration of the track. It's Super Sebring as well, with the WEC in action on Friday and at the Sebring 12 Hours on Saturday. We've also got action from Down Under with their the Australian GT Championship getting underway at Phillip Island, as well as some TCR action too, and IndyCar at Texas. So it's all going on this weekend. So book your place at the sofa now. Get that position all warmed up and ready. Get your DVR on the go, because there is plenty of stuff going on across the weekend. And if you're not watching that, you can check out Grid History on Twitter, because every day we post a motorsport memory from the past, and if we've got a video link from the Grid Video Vault, then we will tack it on there. Plenty of F1 and all random other things coming up through the next few weeks to keep you entertained when there is any other thing that you haven't watched you watched everything that's new, then go back and watch this stuff as well. All of those results will be brought to you in our bumper packed results roundup on next week's show.
And while we're on the subject of Le Mans, the 2022 FIA World Endurance Championship season gets underway in just a couple of days with the 1,000 Miles of Sebring starting at noon Eastern. Super Sebring is back. Both WEC and IMSA competing this weekend at Sebring International Raceway. Be sure to tune in Saturday morning, bright and early at 9 a.m. Eastern Time for our IMSA 12 hours of Sebring pre-race show, but focus on WEC for now. Obviously, Toyota Gazoo Racing are the favorites to win the 1,000-mile event or 8 hours of racing. In the Le Mans Hypercar class, in the number 7 Toyota, 3 returning faces, Mike Conway, Kamui Kobayashi, and Jose Maria Lopez. All 3 of those drivers doing double duty at Sebring, running the 12-hour race with Action Express racing in IMSA on Saturday. Number 8 Toyota, Sebastian Buemi, Brendan Hartley, they're returning, but they have a new teammate following the retirement of Kazuki Nakajima. Ryo Hirakawa comes on board from Super Formula and Super GT in Japan. Then you have the Alpine grandfather LMP1 car and Glickenhaus with strong driver lineups, but during preseason testing, we saw LMP2 cars show excellent speed against the hypercars, and photos you see on the screen courtesy of the FIA WC. Adam, who's most likely to win the 1,000 miles of Sebring? Toyota, Alpine, Glickenhaus, or could we see a big surprise with an LMP2 car winning overall?
Well, you take a look at the practices so far. Alpine, Glickenhaus and Alpine were fast in both practices. But if I had to choose to pick a winner, I would go with the number 7 Toyota Gazoo racing car. Those 3 drivers have a lot of experience racing together. Jose Maria Lopez, Mike Conway, and Kamui Kobayashi. Right? It's overall, how cool is it to see Super Sebring back this weekend? And our colleague Ben Schneider says hard to bet against Toyota. I think, yeah, Ben, it's hard. It's hard to beat those Toyota Gazoo racing cars. They're always strong when it comes to the FIA WEC races all across the world. So if I had to choose a pick a winner, I'd go with the number 7 Toyota Gazoo racing car. Those 3 drivers are so experienced. So there you go.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Ben was saying in the chat room, and you as well, Adam. That it's hard to bet against Toyota. We keep saying that we're going to see someone other than Toyota win. We also keep saying we're going to see an LMP2 win overall, but that still hasn't happened yet, despite all things considered, and Toyota not showing the speed that we're used to seeing from them, practice qualified and all of that. But when the race comes on, that's when Toyota really turns it on. So despite, as you were saying, Adam, Glickenhaus with Romain Dumas leading free practice 1, and then Matthew Vaxivière in the Alpine in free practice 2 being the fastest, I still think the tide is most likely going to turn to Toyota. But I think it would be really interesting to see those other cars from Alpine and Glickenhaus take the fight to Toyota. Make it a really interesting show because we're used to Toyota, just blowing out the field, and I think adding some competition there will really make the show more exciting, especially since it looks like Peugeot's not going to be around for a while, having some teething problems with the start of their Le Mans hypercar program. So hopefully we'll get that figured out. So maybe Peugeot can take the fight to Toyota and join this battle at the front of the FIA World Endurance Championship field. And speaking of LMP2, 2 of the biggest names to watch this year, Sebastian Ogier and Team Penske. Ogier, the 8-time World Rally champion, leaving WRC full-time and switching over to endurance racing. He'll be competing with Richard Mille Racing, a first step in hopefully getting a call-up to eventually compete for Toyota Gazoo Racing in the 24 Hours of Le Mans. The French rally driver has a goal to win his home crown jewel race overall. Team Penske, on the other hand, running full-time in the WC for the first time, getting experience on the world stage before fielded the new factory Porsche LMDH program in 2023 in both WEC and IMSA competition, running running in the hypercar and GTP classes on both sides of the Atlantic. Penske has two of their Porsche factory drivers in LMP2 with them this year. IMSA stars Dane Cameron and Felipe Nasr. Plus, former Penske prototype driver from the American Le Mans Series, Emmanuel Collard, back with the captain after all these years. What should we expect in LMP2 this year from Ogier's endurance racing debut season and Team Penske overall in the WEC?
Well, for me, Sebastian Jose is normally competing off-road, on different terrains, pavement, pavement, gravel, rain, snow. But this year he makes a transition. If Sebastian Jose can at least have a top 10 finish in his class at the end of the season, I think that's a win for him. And how will Team Penske do in LMP2? Same thing. I think if they can come away with a top 10 finish this weekend, as well as Sebastian Ogier, I think it's a win-win for both of them. It's a long season, but you want to start off on the right foot, since Ogier is not used to competing in a sports car. He's normally competing in an off-road rally car. So both Ogier and Team Penske could have a top 10 finish overall. I think that's really good to start their FIA World Endurance Championship season off on the right foot.
I'm actually going to give Sebastian Ogier a little higher bar to set than you gave him, Adam. Since top 10, closer towards the bottom of the class, I'm going to say top 7, top 8, just slightly a bit higher. I think that would be a really good benchmark for Sebastian Ogier to set. So far, he's been putting together some really good lap times in the high downforce prototype, and it seems like he's transitioning well over from the rally car as he's grown accustomed to for many years. And this is a really exciting time for the WEC to get a name like Sebastian Ogier racing in your series, who's considered one of the greatest rally racers of all time. And the name itself, Ogier, being in your series. Sebastian Loeb, the other Sebastian rally legend as well, has raced in the World Endurance Championship as well. So I think that just the name alone is really great in the legend that he is great for the WEC to get him in the series, and especially Team Penske as well. I expect Team Penske to be very competitive all season long and be right up there to win the LMP2 championship. I think this is a really smart decision by the captain, Roger Penske, to race in the LMP2 class this year. As I was saying, they'll get used to all of the rules and regulations of the World Endurance Championship a year ahead of time, because they've never raced over here before, because the rules are slightly different than what they're accustomed to in IMSA. So by the time they have the two Porsche prototypes ready to go next year, they'll have a full understanding of how things go in the WEC, and they'll be ready to hit the ground running in this series and also in IMSA as well. And then you have the GT classes, GT Pro and GTM. And GT Pro, we have your usual factory-backed entries, 2 AF Corsa Ferraris and 2 Porsches, but they have a brand new competitor running full-time against them for the GT Pro title. Corvette Racing, a common name in IMSA, the number 64 Corvette with Tommy Milner and Nick Tandy. Corvette is fielding a single GT Pro entry, and the other Corvette is racing in the IMSA GTD Pro class. How do you expect the single Corvette to fare against the Ferraris and Porsches, who have a lot more experience and data from running in this particular championship?
Well, I think it'll be a slow start for Corvette, but once they get more momentum going toward the middle of the season, I think they can contend with the more experienced Ferraris and Porsches. Those two names that Corvette has, Nick Tandy and Tommy Milner, have a lot of experience racing sports cars in their history. So I know it's one race, but Corvette, I think, as long as they stay competitive all season long, I think they'll give a strong fight to the more experienced AF Corsa Ferraris and Porsches. The GT classes are going to be really competitive all season long in the FIA World Endurance Championship.
Yeah, we don't have many cars competing in GT Pro this year. Only 5 going for the championship, and the numbers have really been depleted in recent years as the GT platform it nears the end of its life cycle. As you know, GT3 is going to be the main form of GT racing moving forward, while GTE is going to become obsolete. The IMSA GTLM category is also obsolete. That's why they replaced it with the GT3 spec cars in GT Pro. I think Corvette is going to do well this year. I know at the test last week at Sebring they were really pleased with the pace and how everything was going. But mention the experience they have Corsa and the Porsche GT team have in this championship. That's going to be massive compared to Corvette, who usually run a regular WEC race here and there in the 24 Hours of Le Mans every single year, minus the year they were affected by the pandemic. Yeah, so I certainly think Corvette is going to do well this year. Will they win the GT Pro Championship? I don't know if I'll say that, but I certainly think they're going to be in contention to win some racing. They might even win this weekend at Sebring for the 2022 FIA World Endurance Championship season opener. And while we're not doing an official pick a winner for the 1,000 miles of Sebring, want all of our viewers let us know in the chat room, who do you think will win the race overall?
It's going to be a very competitive 1,000 miles of Sebring. So if you can find a way to watch that, get your favorite food, you can get your favorite drink, and just kick back and relax. As Super Sebring weekend is officially back, and sports car fans across the world are really happy about that. And next, I have some IndyCar news for you. At the end of last week, AJ Foyt Racing announced that oval specialist J.R. Hildebrand, yes, J.R. Hildebrand, who we all remember from Panther Racing back in the day, will make a return to this team starting this weekend at Texas Motor Speedway. Hildebrand will drive the number 11 Rocket Chevrolet in all the oval races, including this weekend at Texas Motor Speedway. Then he'll compete at Indianapolis, Iowa, and Gateway. Hildebrand is sharing the ride with young lady Tatiana Calderon, who will be competing on the road courses and street circuits. And the photo you see on the screen, courtesy of AJ Foyt Racing. Another edition of Grid Tonight is in the books. I'll send it back over to my colleague, Kobe Lambeth, for the wrap-up.
Yeah, that's it for another episode of Grid Tonight. And please like and subscribe to the Grid Network here on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. We encourage you to take 5 minutes after our show and consider joining our Patreon. Invest in Grid Network to keep us on the air well into the future. Do you want to buy me a coffee? Click the link in the video description below, and you can buy a drink for your favorite on-air talent here at Grid Network. Once again, big thank you to Edward Hunter from Formula E Zone, Amber, and Zachary for buying us a coffee. We greatly appreciate it, and any amount will help us continue growing our motorsports media outlet. Visit public.com, also known as the stock market social media home. The link and referral code gives you $5 to invest immediately. Public.com allows you to connect with your friends. You can make new friends and use tools to learn how to properly invest in the stock market. And looking at our schedule for this week, a new episode of Women in Motorsports Thursday morning with Joe Samniego and Daniel Zeri from Racers, the Girls Behind the Helmet. Saturday, a special Grid Live doubleheader. In the morning, 9 a.m. Eastern Time, it'll be Adam and I and IMSA preview of the Mobile 12 Hours of Sebring, followed by our regular Grid Live pre-race later that day on a really busy afternoon of racing. Then Sunday, Grid Live wrap-up 90 minutes after the NASCAR Cup Series race at Atlanta Motor Speedway. A lot of unknown heading into Atlanta since it's going to be a super speedway style track. We don't know if we're going to see pack racing. We're going to see racing like we usually see at Atlanta. We have no idea what to expect. So I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about from Atlanta. And for Adam Limmeries, I'm Kobe Lambert from the Podium Finish. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform, public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities, such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest and start investing and networking on public.com.